how someone might be able to choose the area that works for them. What is the starting point?
The starting point is, what are you trying to do? What is your goal here?
We all follow different strategies and have different starting points, so it's never a competition.
If you're looking for the right thing in the right place, the yields are exceptional. How to get a little bit more niche about property investing.
When we are buying property, it is very much what are my intentions for that property. If you are going for a cash flow strategy,
it just makes it completely unworkable for buy-to-let investing.
We tend to invest in areas where our property friends are investing as well.
Any tips on finding an HMO hotspot area?
Yeah, so people whack on about due diligence, but it is the thing that you have to do, especially with HMOs. There's so many nuances that you need to be aware of. Before we jump in, let's tackle one of the biggest hurdles for property investors: finding the best buy-to-let locations for top returns. Over the years, we've helped countless individuals pinpoint the most profitable locations and maximise their rental income. To make it easier for you, we've put together a free guide to Buy-to-Let Hotspots for 2025, designed specifically for you to understand the market, stay ahead of the trends, and it even includes a list of our top 10 locations in the UK. Get it now for free by clicking the link in the description below and start building your property portfolio today.
Hi and welcome to This Property Life, the podcast brought to you by Property Wealth System. At This Property Life, we try and give you the insights into the real world of property investors, the good, the bad and the ugly, warts and all. We bring you stories and interviews with people in property that hopefully help and inspire our listeners to get started in property or to keep going amongst all the noise that there is out there. I'm Nick Claydon, and today I'm joined by my property partner, property wife, if you like, Sarah Blaney. Hi, Sarah. Can I call you that?
Yeah, I like that. I'm taking that and running with it, definitely.
And we're here to discuss hotspots, our property hotspots for 2025. And just to warn you, this is not your normal hotspots guide. We're going to do something a little bit different.
Yeah, and why is that, Nick? Go on, have a little moment.
Shall I have my little rant? Shall I do it now? Get it out of the way?
Why not? Get it out your system.
I've listened to a couple of other podcasts that are available, obviously around property. I have listened to a couple talking about hotspots, and it actually really annoyed me because they were so generic. It was so like, oh, just go to Manchester because, there's going to be some capital growth there this year. It was, I think there's just no detail, nothing particularly helpful there. It's like, well, anyone can reel off a few stats about where there's predicted to be maybe property price growth. But actually, that's not what we're actually after as investors necessarily. It can be, but it also doesn't actually represent what we particularly anyway kind of talk about, what we personally invest in, what we teach others to do with property. There's a lot more to it. It's much more nuanced than just go to Manchester because there might be some growth this year.
Well, equally, I was in Manchester this weekend and it's big.
It is, isn't it?
Whereabouts in Manchester?
Yeah, exactly. Is it, which bit? The whole of Manchester. Is the whole of Manchester going to go up 10% this year?
And you know what? There's, as in a lot of these big cities, the crane was in the sky and there was an awful lot of building. It changes every time I go. There's more high rises for example, in Manchester. Should we go and tell people to go to Manchester? Because the city centre is dominated by flats. And I personally would never buy a flat unless I owned the whole building. So there's an awful lot of more detail and very much more unique to the individual and the situation, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not as simple. Anyone looking for a shortcut, quick fix, oh yeah, I'll just go and buy some stuff in Manchester. Well, what are you buying? Again, new build flats? Not for us.
No.
Any kind of flat? Not for us. Are you going to go to the worst part of Manchester or the best part? You're going to go to, the suburbs or the city centre. It's just not detailed enough. So we're going to take a slightly different slant on hotspots. And we're going to just give a little bit more detail. And we're going to say what we do, what some of our people in our network, what they are doing, and hopefully give you a few ideas as to how to get a little bit more niche about property investing, because it is about getting niche.
It is. And so should we perhaps should we talk about where we started? The areas that we looked at first, where your first investment area was, where my first investment area was, because they do change as well, don't they, as you go through, the different strategies in your years into the industry?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for anyone that doesn't know, in terms of our listeners, I'm based in Edinburgh. I'm from London originally, but I'm based in Edinburgh. I've been up here 20 odd years. It's funny how a lot of the podcasts that are based in England kind of forget about Scotland. I think some of them forget about Wales as well. And, I've mentored students and, trained them how to do property all over the country for the last 15 years. And I started in the central belt of Scotland, and I defy anybody to tell me that the central belt of Scotland is not the best place to do buy-to-let investing in the UK. There are
and there'll be a load of people here that will say, oh yeah, but all of those rent controls and all of the legislation that Scotland put in, it can't be good. It can't be good, Nick, hey?
But it is. It is good.
It is.
And the reason it's good is because if you're looking for the right thing, and that's really important, looking for the right thing in the right place, the yields are exceptional. I mean, I'm talking about 12% plus yields comfortably, anything even up to like 15% yields for buy-to-let houses. And I don't think in any of the newspapers or any of the podcasts I've listened to about hotspots has mentioned anything like that. But it is entirely possible and likely to do if you're looking for the right thing in the right place. If you're looking for city centre flats in Edinburgh, no, you're not getting 15% yields. But if you're looking for 2-bed villa flats or 2-bed terraced houses in Kilmarnock and the surrounding area, then you can. So that's where
And of course, it's important to note that within the Scottish market, when we talk about a flat, it is very different to the English market. When we talk about a flat in the English market and the Welsh market, I would not buy a flat unless I owned all of them. But in Scotland, you very much can. They have very different leasehold. Well, they don't have leasehold laws in terms of their cottage flats, villa flats, do they?
Yes, it's a different land use system in Scotland. So again, it's about knowledge, about going niche and understanding your market. But yes, you can buy flats in Scotland. Flats are generally cheaper to buy than houses. The right kind of flat rents for not far off what a similar house would do. And therefore, you can really push your yields up. So I'll defy anyone, please prove me wrong. But for me, that's where I started. I think Central Belt of Scotland is still the best place for buy-to-let investing. Okay, and it's quite specific.
You know what? There is a bunch of our This Property Life members who are now shouting at their radio or on YouTube going, Nick, shush now. That was our secret. What are you doing?
There's enough for everybody. If you can do the right thing in the right place, there's enough for everybody. That's where I started. Carol and I started investing in simple buy-to-let houses across the Central Belt of Scotland. There's enough there. It's great stock. Rental levels are strong. Rental demand is really strong. At no point have I mentioned potential capital growth because, and here's the kicker, I don't care. I don't care.
What do you mean you don't care, Nick? I
don't care about capital growth. Not for that. Because I'm not buying it for that. I'm buying it for yield. That's what I'm focused on. If I get growth, great. But I'm not buying it because I think that Kilmarnock might go up in price by 10% this year. That's not why I'm going to invest there. I'm going there because I can make 15% yields there.
Exactly. When we buy in property, it is very much what are my intentions for that property. We have second exits, which can include, sales and all that sort of stuff. But if you are going for a cash flow strategy, then we're not going to be holding on to these things for 2 years. We're going to be holding on to them for many years, and they're going to form part of our portfolio, far down the line. So the capital growth thing, people do obsess about it, especially people potentially down south who are maybe used to that or see that and see it as a barrier to entry because they can't afford prices. But yeah, it's a different mindset.
It is, and that's why it's niche, and it's not that simple to go hotspots because what are you looking for? What's your strategy? What's your investment strategy? Because if you're looking to do HMOs, the Central Belt of Scotland is not a hotspot. So Sarah,
Absolutely.
So
before we kind of got a bit more educated about property, we were dabbling as little amateurs and we were buying little flats in Luton, which was close to where we lived. There was a big couple of mistakes there. They worked out in the end because of time in the market and a lot of hard work. But yeah, flats, it was awful, a lot of headache. The area, Luton, it was all right. It did what it said, but could we have accelerated our property journey quicker by choosing a different area? then absolutely we could have. However, it worked out in the end, but only because of the experience that I've gained over the years to sort out all the problems of these leasehold flats. When we actually started doing this a little bit more professionally, and Nick and Caroline were very much part of that and helped us sort of see the wood for the trees. Then we moved to Merseyside, so specifically Liverpool. And there was a few reasons for that. We could get there within 3 hours of our home at the time. Rick went to university in Liverpool, so he had an affinity for it. And also, we had other investor friends, including Nick and Caroline, who were investing up there. So we were getting a little bit of a head start on the market knowledge. And, we had to do an awful lot about ourselves as well. But actually, we've tend to invest in areas where our property friends are investing as well, because as you've said, there's more than enough for everyone. We all follow different strategies and have, different starting points. So it's never a competition. But yeah, so Liverpool was our first proper investment area.
Okay. But you weren't in buy-to-let there, if I remember correctly. You didn't go in and do buy-to-lets there.
No, we went straight into HMOs, specifically for students. And at that time, we're going back 10 years now. It was just at the time where you were taking little 2-bed, 2-up, 2-down terraces and using magic and wizardry to turn them into 6-bed HMOs for students with multiple bathrooms and all that sort of stuff. When you say to someone, I took a 2-up, 2-down and turned it into a 6-bed with, 2 or 3 bathrooms, they're like, what? How did you do that? And you're like, well, just by following a model that you'd found in a different part of the country.
I copied it.
And so that's how we started.
Yeah. I mean, you say that. I mean, I didn't invent that. I nicked that from somewhere else. I was mentoring one of our students down in Cardiff, and they wanted to do student housing in Cardiff. At that time, I wanted to get into doing student houses. And I just remember really clearly being out with the student and just seeing, you'd have a row of terraced houses, like 3-bed terraced houses on the street, and then you'd see one that had a loft conversion, and you kind of look around the side and it was extended massively out the back. You're like, whoa, what's going on there? So I remember going and talking to the student letting agency and going, well, I'm seeing this like almost 2 markets here, the 3-bed houses, but I'm seeing like 6, 7, 8-bed houses. Are they the same thing? And they're like, yeah. So, and they basically taught me through this model where investors were buying these 3-bed houses, completely gutting them inside, ripping everything out, like floors, everything out, and almost rebuilding the house, dropping the levels of the floors. And this is like blew my mind at the time. Like, what do you mean this dropping the levels of the floors? And like, yeah, well, traditional 3-bed terrace house, you've got big high ceilings. You don't need all that. So they basically take all the floors out, drop them down, then creates a space in the roof to put more bedrooms in the roof, and then you extend out the back. And it totally blew my mind. I was, that started my mind whirring, and I was like, right, well, I don't want to do it in Cardiff, but I wonder if I could do that in Birmingham where I went to uni. And I knew the areas in the streets. Sure enough, went there. And, other people had started doing it there, and I managed to get in at the time when all the numbers worked for that. But
yeah,
very little is about reinventing the wheel here. It's about seeing what's worked, and then I applied that to Liverpool. Then you came into Liverpool. We did that for a while, and we were, working in collaboration together with some of our other network that were also there. And it was great because, for example, Jordan in our network was also doing some student stuff there in the same streets that we were. And he'd been kind of go, I'm going down to Liverpool. Any of you guys need anything? And you're like, well, yeah, can you just check on my builder and make sure that they're doing X, Y, Z? Or, I actually saw something that I wanted to view. Could you go view it for me? It became, really collaborative there. And I really enjoyed that part of it.
And I think that is part of what we're talking about today with the whole generic, go to Manchester, go to Liverpool, this, that, and the other. There's so much that they're missing out on in terms of the individual, in terms of what do they want to get out of it? How is their life at the moment? What sort of time do they have? The infrastructure that they are going to be using to get to these places. Do they have an affinity with these places? Do they have friends investing around there? Because all of these things make it, more enjoyable. We had a ball down in Liverpool when we were all working and developing properties there. And we had so much fun, didn't we?
Yeah, exactly. We seem to magically combine, Oh, you're going to Liverpool now? Oh, yeah. Well, I was thinking about going to Liverpool next week. So, okay, so we'll go and a few nights out and a bit of work in between, I guess. And it was great fun.
It was good fun. It was. But, I guess let's talk more about how someone might be able to choose the area that works for them. What's the starting point?
Starting point is like, what are you trying to do? What is your goal here? Because it's really easy to just go and buy a house, right? It's not difficult to go and buy a house. But to go and buy a property that is going to consistently make you money from the day you buy it, it's different. That's about having a strategy. And before, so you need to know what you're trying to do. Is your goal to buy 2 or 3 buy-to-lets and that's your retirement portfolio? Are you looking to scale up? You're looking for property to replace your income. If you're a high earner, you might need to be looking at different strategies like HMOs or service accommodation or commercial. So everything stems from what is it you're actually trying to achieve with property? What's it for? What you're trying to do? Because that then will determine, your strategy and then where you go to do that. Because not every strategy works in every area, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the strategy is absolutely key, and we all start from a different place. We all have different life challenges and, things that would stop us moving in certain directions, like literally geographically. I'll give you a great example, Nick, actually. I took a wonderful couple, Caroline and Gary. They were living in North Hertfordshire. They had big property portfolio already in Norwich area because family members lived there. So it made sense for them to sort of be in that area. And they'd been told that Darlington was a great investment area.
Read that somewhere, some property guru somewhere read, Darlington.
Yeah, exactly. Plucked from air. And they heard that and they were like, really want to go up there. So we had some pre-sessions, just before we went on this sort of mentorship. And I did my very level best to say, do you really want to go to Darlington? Is it what your stage of life needs? They were sort of just pre-retirement and they kind of loved going on holiday and living, a good life, but all the times that they'd worked and put all that effort in. They were determined to get up to Darlington. So we all ended up heading up that way. And don't get me wrong, Darlington is a great investment area, even more so now than it probably was, the few years ago that I was up there with this particular couple. But, we went up and sure enough, we found some great bargains and, the numbers worked and we got to know the area really, quite extensively the time that we were up there, using all the tools that me and you know and that we try and teach others. But fast forward a few years, those properties work, but do they work for Caroline and Gary, who are off on holiday, doing this? They've got older kids who, they want to go away with as well. Do those properties work for that couple? Because no matter what, property is not a passive thing. You can hand it over to letting agents, but it's still your property and you have to take responsibility for it. And actually heading up north or just having that knowledge and that mindset of all my stuff is like 4 or 5 hours up the way to a place where I have no other contacts or affinity. Is it right for people who are trying to simplify their lives? It wasn't. Fast forward, they sold them all because, hey, it was exactly as I said at the beginning, it's not the right area for you.
Yeah. And I think this is what a lot of, potential investors get stuck on. I think when we go to networking meetings, I think the biggest question, a lot with our training as well, is, well, where do I do this? Where do I go? It's like, well, it's not a simple answer. We could reel off 10 places where we think are great potential investment areas, but it's irrelevant. There's no point in me saying Central Belt Scotland is brilliant if you live in Swansea or you live in, South Wales, because just go there because that's almost as good, or if you live in Cornwall, you're not going to be driving 11 hours up to Scotland to go and invest just because I said it was good, So there's plenty of other investment areas around the UK that are good, and we will talk about some of those. But again, it just comes down to your goal. What are you trying to do here? If you're trying to make your life easier, not harder, why travel 5 hours up the road when you could maybe do 2 hours up the road and find somewhere else to invest, or just go back to Norwich and find where you've got family and you've got support and infrastructure and find a strategy that works for you there. So I think a lot of people get fixated on a strategy. I've heard service accommodation is brilliant. I want to go do that. Okay, why? what you're actually trying to achieve here. And there might be a better way to achieve that than going and doing that strategy particularly. So, there's a lot of factors that come into play when you're looking for hotspots. And I think where we're trying to get to is there's no generic hotspot that's great. What we want to get to at the end of this episode is find the hotspot for you. Where is a hotspot for you and your strategy and what it is you're trying to achieve? Because there's loads of them.
And I'm going to do a really shameless plug here, Nick, I'm afraid. So forgive me. But, we've spoken at length about how this is very much about what is your goal. It leads to your strategy. The strategy leads to the area. And the area then leads to the property. So don't let the tail wag the dog. Don't let the property dictate where you're going to go. This goal, strategy, area, property is very much the system that we use and that all of our members use. And if people are wanting to find out a little bit more about that, well, just so happens there's a fortune of good luck that Nick and I have actually written a book about this. It includes some other things as well, but it is available on Kindle. It's available on our website. The No Nonsense Guide to Property Investing will really take all of that beginning part, that strategy, and it will give you, a really good rundown of what could work for you and therefore, where you should be focusing your efforts in terms of area.
Fab. For those on YouTube, give us a visual, Sarah. Let's we got a copy of it there, but you have.
I do have a copy here.
No fancy covers. It's just a nonsense guide. It's like literally what you need to know to get started. For those of you looking to get started or a bit stuck.
Small print, so wear your glasses. But, it's just, some really good information written by me and you.
Yeah. We wrote a book, Sarah.
We did. Brilliant.
I might write another one.
Let's do it. Let's do it after this.
So it's really important to find the hotspot that's right for you. Okay. So let's say you're looking at doing something like HMOs. Okay. So you might be at a point where your goal is to replace your income. You may be a high earner. You're looking to replace 5, 6, 7K a month. Best will in the world, going and buying cheap houses for buy-to-let, making £200 cash flow per deal. It's going to take you quite a long time to get there. So you might be looking to start maybe at a high level like Vic and Sarah did, in which case, don't go to the central belt of Scotland. That's no good for HMOs. It's not a hotspot for HMOs. So we need to find another area for HMOs. So Sarah, any tips on finding an HMO hotspot area?
Yeah, so due diligence, people whack on about due diligence, but it is the thing that you have to do, especially with HMOs. There's so many nuances that you need to be aware of. And it does depend also where you're living, how much time you've got, how involved you're going to be. So if I was a London or based in the southeast kind of or southwest, sort of southwestish investor, and I was looking for HMOs, I would pick some areas, run the numbers on that and whittle it down that way. But I'd also go to networking meetings. I'd go to, the community groups like this Property Life community group. And I would be talking to other people about their experiences. And from that sort of thing, I would find out, for example, and here's a top tip for people based down south who want HMOs. Bridgewater, which is over to the west, is a great place for HMOs. There's a big infrastructure project happening there, which means for the next, I think it's 6 to 10 years, they're going to need at least 6,000 rooms. So that is great to be on that at the beginning. I say at the beginning, it's been going on for probably, a year to 18 months, but it's still the beginning in terms of where, you need to be. You can still go there, go to Bridgewater, talk to the letting agents, talk to the people that are specifically doing HMOs to find out then, well, okay, so this area is good. What do the people that are looking for these rooms want? Do they want en suites? Go into this level of detail because that will then help you look at the property. So, we've got our strategy, our area, the property. We used to do when we did our HMOs up in Liverpool, if we wanted to look on a street to see whether that street would be any good for the model that we did, we'd literally pace out the front footprint, didn't we, of the property to see if it was wide enough to actually accommodate what we needed to do with it. So again, you need to do that sort of thing if you were to go to, say, Bridgewater. And then you need to find out, well, where are the specific streets where this is going to work best, not just from a property type of thing, but also from a local area dynamics kind of thing. Because again, if I bring it back to Liverpool, back when in the day we would, there's a park up in L6, and if you were on one side of the park, you'd get a certain type of profile. And it would work if that's the profile you wanted. If you were on the other side of the park, you'd get the students, which is where we were aiming, and they wouldn't go the other side of the park. It was only a few meters, 100 meters away, but they wouldn't go there. So you have to know this type of really specific postal code analysis, I suppose.
Yeah, and even when I started in Birmingham, it was, there's a very specific area for student HMOs. I wanted to do student, and if you're not doing student, you'd be looking at somewhere like a Bridgewater, because there's lots of different types of HMOs. I wanted to do student, so that's the market I researched. I wanted to be in that market. There's a very, very specific area, and if you're in the area, you'll pretty much let your houses, year in, year out, ongoing, right? And that's what I found. I generally let my houses in October for the next academic year. If you're outside of that area, and you might only be 50 meters outside that area, you're going to struggle, because in the student's mind, that's the end of the student area, and the other side of that road, it's no good. Not going to go there unless they absolutely have to. So your houses are always let last. But also in that kind of dynamic market, you've got to be on top of your game, because I've just had to remodel one of my older HMOs because 10 years ago, 12 years ago, a 7-bed 2-bathroom was good. That was like top of the market. Great. Now it's got to be en suites. So I've had to spend 70 grand remodeling one of my HMOs that I only did 10, 12 years ago to bring it up to standard. But now, it lets immediately. The rent's gone up 30%. So it will pay me back. It will take a few, 3 years or something, but it will pay me back. So you've got to go niche. You've got to know the market that you're after. Yeah. So if you're going to do student, your hotspot is in Birmingham. Student Birmingham market is literally about 15 streets. That's the hotspot. You've got to be in it. But if you're going to do something like, professional HMOs, which are brilliant, strategy with HMOs. If you're living maybe more north of the country, a hotspot I would look at would be somewhere like Barrow-in-Furness, right? Now, a lot of people might not have even heard of that place. Okay. But if you research it, you'll see that it's basically a company town almost, right? It's right in the Lake District. It's kind of stuck out on a bit of land in the Lake District, but there's a huge BAE Systems industrial complex there. And when BAE Systems win new contracts, which they have just done, for big government, defense projects, they need to accrue, and they bring a lot of people in who, come and live there for 2-3 years. They might only live there Monday to Friday, but that's an HMO and that's an HMO market. And, you can buy houses fairly cheaply there. You turn them into 4, 5, 6-bed HMOs, but you do it for that market. So you need to understand, what does that market want? But that's where I'd be looking. That's how niche you kind of need to go if you're looking at HMOs, is go and find where is the demand. You can't just say Manchester is great, because not all of Manchester is great for HMOs. There will be some bits that are, but they'll be quite niche. Probably 98% of Manchester is no good for HMOs because there's no demand for it.
So what about some buy-to-let areas? Obviously, we've mentioned the central belt of Scotland, which is, both of our opinions, it is one of, probably the best area of the UK to do buy-to-let. But there are obviously other areas available. So, I am based down on the south coast. So for me, actually, would I invest in Scotland in buy-to-lets? Yes, I would, because I have a drawer that would take me up there, a side of property, which is obviously Nick and Caroline. Yeah, that's you. Well, that's Jordan as well, and Ryan. So I've got a lot of friends that live up in Scotland, which would incentivize me to, go up there and actually have fun whilst I'm doing this. If I didn't, would I choose Scotland? It's a long way to go. Yes, I can get up there on a plane, but that's, can be expensive. So I wouldn't, unless, I had that other drawer there.
But you have got cheap flight, haven't you? So it's quite new.
Yeah.
Ryanair flying from Bournemouth to Edinburgh.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we can get up and down in non-peak hour times for, 20 quid or something. So yes, those, I can't rely on that. But I guess whilst I'm building up my portfolio potentially in the central belt, I could go up there and do that. Borrow your Tesla and I'll be away on the roads. It'll be all good. But other places I could look as a southern-based investor for buy-to-let, depending on my capital pot available and, my strategy, etc. Could be places, to get to Wales from around my area is 2 and a bit hours. It's not actually that much. Wales is another fantastic place for buy-to-let. And again, people might go to Wales and think, I need to buy in Swansea or Cardiff. Well, they're great. And, you will have a lot of demand there, but your yields and the performance of your property and the return on your investment will be far better if you look in the valleys, anywhere sort of from Cardiff up to sort of Merthyr and all of those little branches off of that bit. These are all really good areas. And, I've spent a lot of time in Wales. There's a lot of stock that needs bringing up to date. So you can buy things, add the value, and do that whole BRR model that we talk about, generally and also in our book. But yeah, great place to go is Wales, but specifically there's certain areas within.
Yeah, exactly. I've generally seen recently, properties that you could pick up in a distressed condition for 50k, sometimes a bit less, done up, 80, 90. So there's your capital growth. You've forced your own capital growth there. And these properties are rent out for like £800 a month. It's great. Do the maths. And you'll see that from a buy-to-let perspective, if you're buying it right, if you've got the right mindset about buy-to-let, it's a brilliant area to do buy-to-lets. Yeah, that is a real hotspot, I would say. But you have to get it right. You're not buying shiny new apartments in Cardiff city centre. That's not what you should be doing for buy-to-let. If you find yourself thinking, well, but prices might go up for that over the next couple of years, then you've got the wrong mindset for buy-to-let. You're really speculating.
And what about our northern contingent? Where would we suggest for those guys?
Well, I think people gravitate towards Liverpool and Manchester because they hear people talking about Liverpool and Manchester. We have talked about Liverpool, but we've talked about it in a very specific way. If you've never done buy-to-let before and you drive into Liverpool, it's just overwhelming. It's too big. Which bit do you go to? Or Manchester's the same, even bigger. My advice would be look at the smaller towns that surround these bigger cities. Yeah, because as soon as you're kind of in that area of the northwest or northeast as well, or Yorkshire, some of those towns, as soon as you look at the smaller towns surrounding the bigger cities, you'll find that it's much more manageable to get your head around. The numbers work quite nicely in some of those towns. So, I could pick a few that I've looked at recently, but, around Liverpool, you've got places like Wigan, Helens, Runcorn. Even a bit further into Wales, you've got Wrexham, that's a little bit up and coming, with everyone's aware of the Ryan Reynolds connection in Wrexham. There's a bit of a boost in popularity there. But some of those smaller towns that are a bit kind of under the radar, that's where I would be looking. Those would be my hotspots in the north.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you can do is you could take a place like Leeds and look at the train lines out from, Leeds main train station and follow that train line out and see the little suburbs that exist along that route, because people do migrate out, especially, because of the pandemic and people working from home a couple of days a week and, all of that sort of stuff. People have pushed themselves out of cities as well. So, if you take Leeds, the train line that goes out towards Keighley, so looking at those little hotspots along the way and exploring those places for buy-to-let rather than, looking at Headingley or wherever it is and thinking, actually, the prices have gone up massively here. I can't afford this.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people get put off. They hear about, you've got to go to Manchester, Leeds or Liverpool, and they go there and it's overwhelming and it's like, it's too hard. Yeah, if you go to one of the smaller towns surrounding, you could get to know that town in a couple of visits. It doesn't take long to get to know a little town centre. The houses all look the same. The houses in Wigan look exactly the same as they do in Liverpool, but it's got its own town centre and it's got its own identity. And often I think you'll find these little commuter satellite towns really popular with renters. They don't want to be in the centre of Liverpool. They'd rather be in a town that they could commute in, but it's got its own identity and it's a bit kind of nicer place to live. So that's where I'd look.
Definitely. If you're on the east of the country, then, and you're based anywhere sort of south to mid of the east of the country, I think there's lots of opportunity around there. Sort of, if you look at Lincoln is big. Again, deep down into the streets of Lincoln and the areas, there's a lot of lovely little villages where you can do flips for retirees, for example, around that area. But Lincoln city centre and its little surrounds are great for buy-to-let, good for HMOs. And actually, it's got quite a thriving SA market as well. And that SA market, again, what does that look like? Well, deep dive into it. It does have a tourism and leisure market there, but it's also got an awful lot of infrastructure projects going on. So there is lots of contractors. So, you have got, I think, a lot of opportunity around Lincoln, which, if you are based on the east, it is sort of straight up. If you're in Essex, for example, it's an easier one to get to.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes even some of the coastal kind of traditional port towns, they can be quite nice little hotspots for buy-to-let as well. Cheaper prices in some of those areas. So, really, I guess the way that we teach, we talk about buy-to-let is, you're not buying 200, 300 grand houses for buy-to-let. It's really, really difficult to make that stuff work, especially when you factor in things like the stamp duty that you now have to pay. It just makes it completely unworkable for buy-to-let investing. You've got to go, I would say, sub 100K. That's what you're looking for. So that can immediately filter out a lot of areas. So for those in the southeast, you are going to have to travel to do buy-to-let. That's just the reality of it. But you don't need to travel to Darlington. A couple of hours is about the max you want to go. Otherwise, you just make your life a lot harder than it needs to be.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we've mentioned quite a few different places there that people can, maybe explore a little bit more. But I would urge anyone that if they haven't found their investment area at the moment, to really look at it from, well, what is my goal? How does it fit into my life? Where do I want my life to look like? How does that then affect the strategy that I'm going to go for? And if that my strategy is, around cash flow, then where is the area that's going to give that? What is the prices? What is the rental? What is the demand for rental? What's the stock levels? That will lead me to my area, and then that leads to the property. So, stock levels are also, quite important because it gives us, more opportunities. So this is a bit of a volume gain sometimes in property. You have to put quite a lot of offers in to be able to get, the yes and get the acceptance. If you're choosing a small little village where only 3 things come up for sale every quarter, you're going to really restrict the way that you can do things.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think what we're telling you here is go niche, find your own hotspot that works for you. Don't just listen to a couple of podcasts, somebody that says go and invest in wherever and just head off there. There's a lot more to this than just picking somewhere at random because somebody told you it was good. Yeah. So find your own hotspot is really what we're talking about. So how can anyone get hold of our book if they want to get hold of it? Which you all should.
Oh, they should. Absolutely. You really should. So if you are the sort of person that really likes a paper copy in your hand that you can leaf through and make notes and all that sort of stuff, then you can head to thispropertylife.co.uk and go to our membership options, and it will give you, you can buy the book direct from us there. I think it's priced at $8.99, but don't quote me on that. It will then come through the post to you. If you are the sort of person that likes it on your Kindle, then head to Amazon, go to Kindle and search up the No Nonsense Guide to Property Investing, written by Sarah Blaney and Nick Claydon, and it will come up there and you can buy it on Kindle as well. And if you do buy it on Kindle, please leave us a review. Let us know what you thought of the book. But yeah, basically thispropertylife.co.uk for the paperback version and Kindle for the digital edition.
Great. Thanks, Sarah. And anybody who wants to talk to us, you can find us at thispropertylife.co.uk. If you've got questions, please, we'd love to hear your questions. We'd love to answer your questions. We're here to help everybody become successful in property. We have a great network. We have regular meetups. So do get involved. And we will look forward to speaking to you again soon. Take care.